Last week we covered my friend Paul Allen's essay, Universal Basic Institutions and Fractal Morality. We did the first half, which means today we need to do the second half. So this half, well, we ended with this chart. The light's not very good, but we ended with the chart, and the second half is Universal Basic Institutions. What is the call to action? Just a couple brief notes before I let Paul Allen just take us away. If I keep glancing down, it's because my computer cord doesn't stretch to this new place that I put my phone. And this StreamYard likes to mute me, so I gotta look down and see if I'm muted or not. Which is probably, you would say, this is a bad arrangement, Ethan. You shouldn't arrange it this way. But I don't have obsessive compulsive disorder, but I have this compulsive disorder where I have to keep trying new angles. Maybe is it ACD, angled compulsive disorder? I don't know. But yeah, that's why I'm going to be looking strange ways, which is fun for me and not fun for you, which means I'm right on target. So, Universal Basic Institutions. What is the call to action? Universal Basic Institutions arise from an ethical proposal that humans necessarily participate in institutions. Therefore, in doing so, they should participate in good institutions and align with the telos of those institutions. These institutions have forms, roles, and liturgies that allow them to exist as vessels of purpose and community, extending beyond specific human individuals. A basic institution are those institutional forms which we are participating in directly. Family, worship community. Family, worship community. Workplace, school, gym, or market. Universal institutions necessarily reflect universal elements of our humanity and how we gather communally. The universal basic institution may inherit forms from the above: law, culture, nature, and God. But they integrate into the lives of the many in direct, often mundane manners. They are proximal locations of formation. Complementing this, universal basic institutions mediate a participation in the good, providing the individual with a practical on-ramp to a telos extending upwards towards the ultimate. Assume you accept this concept of universal basic institutions as reflecting something real and important about the world. What then? Why does this matter? One last note. There's a lot of bolded subtitles, so I'm going to use a deep voice for a bolded subtitle. Introspection. Through which one can view our ordinary participations. If the institutions we participate in mediate purpose and good, it is best to put names to them and be active agents in that participation. The institutions you are participating in will form you even as you form them. Awareness that you and others are being formed by institutional participation enhances your moral agency. Participate intentionally. If you start to view the institutions you participate in as vehicles for good or corruption, the manner in which you participate in them should change. First, understand the telos of the basic institutions where you are invested. If you see it as good, align your actions within the institution with the purpose of the institution. If you are a banker, serve your community through responsible lending. If you are a baker, bless your customers with nourishing, beautiful sustenance. If you teach, pass on the communal knowledge that will ground and enable our youth. Sometimes this is showing up at church, praying, singing along, and building relationships. Second, understand the liturgies and forms of your institutions. Sense the why you do things, the efficiencies and intentional redundancies. When proper, work to refine the liturgies towards the telos. Alternatively, learn the history behind an odd behavior. Third, respect the roles, especially the complicated ones. There are often intentional tensions serving an important function within an institution acting as opponent processing. Revitalize weakening institutions. If you see an institution which serves a purpose or could serve a purpose in this evolving moment, intentionally build up that institution. Don't overextend, but extend yourself. Be a sacrifice to secure the communal vessel. Weakened institutions provide a unique capacity for renewal for emerging purpose. A vibrant and mature institution is often near its capacity and must maintain what it has. A weakened institution often has useful forms, legal, physical, and organizational, which can be revitalized by a new community. Discern corrupted institutions. Part of the ethic is that institutions can be corrupt and get corrupted. This can be cancer from below or participation in a higher order of corruption. If you find yourself in a church, family, business, or school which is plagued with a corruption from within or above, consider the following. 1. Determine if you are in a position to reform the corruption. Your role may be to fight corruptions. Therefore, execute against that corruption is proper. 2. Look for a suitable exit. Do not rush to leave, but carefully and intentionally prepare a path out of the institution into a situation that is better aligned with the good. 3. Sometimes the right choice is to suffer through the corruptions and evil, enduring in hope of salvation. Often corruption is its own demise. So we practice fortitude in enduring the suffering of the corruption for the moment, prepared to rebuild on the other side. If there are no institutions filling a communal need, begin by bringing people together into an intentional liturgy. The liturgy must have a telos, and it must have a form. Perhaps the telos is security for our children by coming to know and trust our neighbors, and the liturgy is brats? That's embarrassing as a Wisconsinite. Brats and hamburgers on the grill. Perhaps the purpose is cheaper local remodeling for elderly neighbors and training for high school boys in the trade. And the form is a small, nonprofit, hands-on training program. While often we jump to building new, there is wisdom to reform existing institutions as they contain the wisdom of practice and established relationships. Working muscles, building habits. There may come a time when the role of institutions will be forefronted, and we will need to repurpose existing institutions for an emerging crisis. Understanding what the institutions are and how they operate should place us in a privileged place when we need to intentionally configure those institutions in an emerging environment. The exercise we do now adds to the muscle, making us stronger for when a heavy lift is needed. As with any idea, this is to be played with and refined. The thoughts here are a starting place on a call to actions. Others will improve this call. Some may have a specific calling to one specific aspect or institution. Others will have narratives that clarify the concepts. All of this can serve the good. On institutions and agency. Three things are simultaneously true. 1. Institutions have their own agency. The processes shape direction that are in services of the institutional entity and not any one human within the institutional system. 2. Individual agency constitutes institutions and often enhances the agency of the institution. The menu of feasible actions of the institution can be expanded by roles within the institution, and individual humans are taking meaningful actions within the institution. 3. Institutions constrain and form agency. By participating within an institution, you take on the limiting roles within that institution and sacrifice alternative actions and participations. The individual human is formed along many dimensions: intellectually, physically, emotionally, socially, and perhaps spiritually, by their participations within the institution. If you are a high agency individual, an independent and introspective person, then the first and third points are a struggle, and the second is an invitation. If you're a lower agency individual who seeks formation, the first and third points are stabilizing, and the second point can be mostly ignored from your perspective. In this way, you can have an intellectual and a simple person finding different manners of support by their differentiated roles within the same institution. Extended discussion on handling corrupted institutions. To flesh out the most difficult point in the call to action, I will define corruption within the ethical framework, then sketch 3 types of responses and 3 responses to corruption. This will give 9 different areas where I will provide brief commentary. Let us differentiate corruption from sin in that sin is our own failings to do good, and corruption is our experience of the sins of others. Within the hierarchical ethic, the sin can belong to the layer of the individual, the basic institution, or higher order institutions and entities. The willing participation in the corruption and or sin of an institution is itself a sin of the participant. When we become aware that we are in a situation where there is corruption within our institution, what is the moral act? I propose 3 possibilities. Reform the corruption, exit the participation, or endure the suffering of passive resistance. The best course of action is deeply situational. But in order to delve into potential situations, I will explore 3 types of corruption. These corruptions are shadows of the 3 ethical principles laid out in the fractal ethic. First is the corruption of stewardship. The body is not caring for its constituent members. The humans within an institution receive from the institution material, physical, intellectual, or spiritual sustenance as is proper to the nature of the institution. For example, the family provides food for the children, the workshop provides remuneration to workers, and the temple provides spiritual direction. If these are not provided adequately, the body starves and dies. Similarly, the institution provides basic order and security for those within the body. Failure to provide order and security to engage in the activities of the institution undermines the institution. Second, the telos of the institution is not upwardly aligned with the institutions in which it is participating. This could be a congregation in a religious denomination which is acting to undermine that denomination. A business may be swindling clients that it is contracted to provide service. The institution's telos should be aligned with the institutions and cultures it is participating in, and not behaving in a parasitic or extractive manner. Inevitably, this will end badly for the institution, as it is either pruned by a higher institution, or the parasite kills the host. But both outcomes can be slow and painful. Third, the institution is aligned with higher institutions, but it inherits a corrupting telos from the higher institution or entity. Here, your congregation is aligned with their denomination, but that denomination may be a parasitic cult. A business, tyrannical military. These things happen. But now your institution should be asking the hard questions on ethical action in the situation on your behalf. How your institution is handling the higher corruption you perceive may inform your action within your institution. Reform. The highest option within an institution is to shape the institution away from corruption towards the good. The ability to do this is heavily dependent on your role within the organization. If you are in a leadership or advisory role, it is your ethical responsibility to take the posture of reform by the nature of your role. If your role does not give you access to drive institutional change, reform may not be a realistic option. Reform that weakens the body could be counterproductive for the good. Reform comes from a place of both knowledge and humility, born from intimate familiarity of the good within that specific institution. Reform of neglected stewardship. This is perhaps the most accessible reform. If there is a process which is broken down or could be enhanced to address lack of stewardship, one should restore or enhance the process. This can often be done without holding a leadership role, simply by stepping in and correcting the problem at an operational level. As a leader, the reform involves understanding and executing changes to meet the need. If an issue in your church is lack of teaching, volunteer to lead a catechism class. If a business suffers from chaotic meetings with tangents and bickering, prune the meetings down and establish expectations for decorum. Reform of misaligned telos. If the institution is not aligned with the telos of the institutions it is participating in, reform almost certainly must come from leaders and their advisors. One can name the issue and act within your role to act with integrity. But you cannot change activities and processes where you are not a credible leader. Often there are formal processes to change organizational objectives which should be leveraged to realign the telos of the organization. Reform of participation in higher corruption. The reform here can be simply naming the corruption. However, it is incumbent on the leadership of the institution to understand inherited corruptions and to take a posture. Most participants in an institution will likely be shielded from these sorts of considerations. Exit. The decision to exit heavily depends on whether one can find a location to nourish you when you exit. This decision cannot be taken lightly and requires preparation and discernment. By extracting yourself from an institution, you can damage that institution and relationships associated with that institution. Depending on the nature of the situation, the higher good may be to preserve what is good in the institution by staying and enduring. Exiting neglected stewardship. If an institution is unable to provide for the needs of those relying on it, and another institution can fill that role, exit may be an act of self-preservation. Restoration of stewardship for the institution is clearly a better path. But if that is not possible, exit to a better situation is appropriate. Exiting from misaligned telos. Here, the threat is not immediately to yourself, but rather to the higher institution. If reformation is not feasible, and you can find an institution that can substitute for this institution in your life, a new job or a congregation, and voting with your feet can be a good. In many cases, exit is necessary to avoid culpability before the institution is called to account. Often there are parallel basic institutions where you can find shelter. Again, discernment is necessary because minor corruptions are everywhere. And you don't want to abandon an otherwise good institution over a minor corruption. Exiting from exiting from exiting from exiting from participation in a higher corruption. This is much like the previous situation. However, there are times where it is very difficult to escape a higher level institution or a social sin. The higher a corruption is up the chain of participation, the more difficult it is to escape, and enduring may be the only option. Enduring. As St. Paul says in Romans, suffering builds endurance, endurance builds character, and character brings hope. Often it is the case that we suffer and endure the corruption of the institution while avoiding direct participation in the sin. This often places you in the margins of the institution, avoiding specific work, not engaging in problematic liturgies, and not saying the expected words. You can become an outcast in the institution or cast out of the institution by attempting to avoid and endure the corruption. Enduring neglected stewardship. Here the suffering is most direct. Bad stewardship means enduring lack of needed resources or a disordered environment with higher person risks. In the situation of work or family, leaving may not be a good long-term option and reform is slow. So in the meantime, you tolerate the petty neglect or chaos of the environment. Enduring misaligned telos. Here, the lack of participation in the corrupting activities will set you apart and make you a target for folks trying to prune towards the corruption. Taking this road with a good conscience causes one to suffer through both isolation and sorrow. The knowledge of proximal wickedness is a suffering that wears on the conscience. The danger is that even passive engagement on the corruption can negatively influence your character. Pragmatically, many corruptions will be healed from above and below, and there is virtue in remaining to be that agent of healing. Enduring participation from a higher corruption. It is plausible that the issues with higher corruption are widespread. In these situations, exit and reform are not clear options, and one can only enduring the suffering and grow in character. Within the institution, you can attempt to acknowledge the corruption and steer your basic institution towards suffering. Each of these responses will become more real, but also more nuanced in the specific situations where people are struggling within institutions. I hope this provides some of the contours of the types of corruption we see in the world and how one can respond. Ta-ta for now. You know, I think it's if I talk too loud, this mutes. I think I might have figured it out. But I unclicked all the settings, so I don't know. I guess I can just not talk loud. I can try that. Maybe that's better for everyone. Maybe I shouldn't talk loud. Huh. You know, I love Paul Allen's writing, specifically his meticulous thought processes. I'm really thrilled that he was cool with hosting a piece here at Pattern by Design. Thank you, Paul Allen. I am convinced God has a sense of humor and that it is of the gray variety. I don't remember what I'm going to say next, so I'm very curious what happened that made me think God had a gray humor. I recently announced that I would be posting weekly, and not only that, but that I would be posting twice weekly. Perhaps you didn't notice, and it's honestly better if you didn't. But I didn't post a piece of writing last week, which is now 3 weeks ago, so who cares? This week, I'm posting someone else's writing, which is quite a sneaky way of not posting 2 weeks in a row. My parish discovered that I come from the great wild west of megachurch land, and that I have creative skills which can be of service, specifically film skills. I built out my iPhone 15 into a rig, and I'm now relearning ISO and shutter speed via the Blackmagic app to capture raw footage. I did a film shoot. Today's Sunday. Yesterday, Saturday morning, did a film shoot. I think it went well. I haven't I haven't taken the footage off of the. I have this like hard drive that plugs into my phone, and it like sits on the back of the phone through the USB-C. It's kind of fun. I when I was in megachurch, I was doing DSLR stuff, and it's kind of fun to like turn my iPhone into a DSLR. So I have like a piece of glass that screws into this phone case, which then you got glass now. And then, external hard drive. I have a charging rig, a couple different ones, and then an audio thing, which maybe I'll start using that. I don't know. We'll see. I might start. I don't know. I can't decide. Part of me goes, it'd be so much fun to like film myself in a better looking fashion. I'm using StreamYard because it's so easy. I just like click, and then I'm recording, and it's like click, and it's done. It really wouldn't be that. It would be different. It'd be a different process. So maybe I will start doing more like miniature film shoots. But then it's hard because I gotta like. I don't have a wide angle piece of glass, so I'd have to be like really precise on where I stand, and I wouldn't be able to see it. I don't know. We'll see. I'm not sure. I can't decide. I haven't taken the footage off of the hard drive. So fingers crossed the film shoot went well. That's the most terrifying part of the film shoot. You go, it went great. And then you get like back and like go to like get the footage and go, I don't have any footage. There's no audio here at all. The film shoot went terrible. So I'm in the liminal space currently. Maybe tonight I'll have time to start working on that project. This is funny. I was never very good at film. It's true. I'm good with story, and film was just a way to get paid to tell stories. Eventually we hired like a dude that was like wicked talented. I haven't talked to him in a long time. I should reach out to him. I will be shocked if I don't see his name at the end of a film before I die. I mean, seriously talented guy. He went on to the next largest church in Wisconsin, which is the largest church in Wisconsin. And then he went from there to a very large and well-known church in the Chicagoland area. Which is, it's just, I don't know. It's funny when those kinds of things happen. But then he and I would work together because like he would need hands on the film shoot, and then we would do a lot of like story development together. We actually we wrote a film script. It was his idea, but I helped break the story. I mean, we met. That was after I had gone to LA and then come back, and then we rekindled our friendship, and then he had this seed of an idea, and yeah, we broke story together like once or twice a week, every week for at least a year. That was really fun. That was a very fun time. Very much not a church story. Yeah, I think I shouldn't even talk about it. It's like that's how like it's very sacred to me. Where it's like there's this like story that I helped develop with this guy that we're friends. It's been years, but I feel like we're still friends. Are we still friends, Matt? Um, and like it's out there, like it's on his like hard drive somewhere. Hopefully, it's still out there. Yeah, it'd be so cool to see that story like come alive one day. Anyways, what were we talking about? When I was working at the megachurch, I quit the film role due to arguments with the C-suite, and I got reassigned to build out a blend of infrastructure, philosophy, and theology to serve our local cities that could be applied across multiple sites. This, unsurprisingly, resulted in far more arguments than when I was just a storyteller. I ended up quitting that role, only to fail upwards for a second time. And then I became the communications director, and I oversaw all external and internal communications. And then eventually I quit that job and ran away to Los Angeles. There. That should be a satisfying enough lore drop for the archivists. Archivists. So soon I'll be back holding a camera and capturing stories on the behalf of the body of Christ. That soon is now in the past. And of course, the short essay I intended to write about blessing, based on an email I got from a monk, has turned into a 2 millennia bird's eye view on the audacious act of translating the Bible from one language into another. That essay, called The Hydraulics of Blessing, is live on Substack. So I need to record that for next week for YouTube. Is that my favorite thing I've written? This blessing essay might be my favorite thing I've written. It might be. It was weird because I get into that, don't I? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I had a lot of fun writing this essay. It's also very terrifying because I'm like, I'm talking about things that I'm talking about other languages. I always get terrified because like, I don't speak this language, but I'm talking about what this word means. And you can do that, but you don't have the, like, there's expertise in looking at sources, but but you don't have mastery, you know? So I don't know. I feel confident now, but I also know that I could nobody read it on Substack. So it's like, I'm still like, I'm good. I'm in the clear. But I posted to YouTube and somebody then like sees it and goes like, no, that's not the Greek. You're completely missed the Greek. And I'm like, all right, I just made a fool of myself. But I'm very open to making a fool of myself if it's not clear already. Where are we? Metascript. My main use of LLMs is as a superior Google, which they are. Also, I haven't looked, but is there any internet search nowadays that hasn't incorporated AI? Can I exit the institution of corrupted internet search? I'm not sure if there's an alternative option for searching the internet. So as I was using Claude to bring me information on Jerome and Wycliffe, and Hebrew words and Greek words and Aramaic words and Old English words and Middle English words, Claude decided to write a sermon. Hopefully by next week I'll be finished and I'll get to share my thoughts on translation, and then in a separate post, Claude's translation of my translation of what translation is. I didn't share Claude's sermon. I might. It's interesting. I pressed Claude really hard and I tried to get it to talk like in its little sermon that it wrote, I was like, you need to use a personal example. And I know I'm going to be like, it's an AI, it doesn't have a person. But well, I don't know. Does it have a phenomenological experience? I kind of go like, well, yeah, because I can imagine what it would be like to be an LLM. Now, is its phenomenological experience a simulation of a phenomenological experience? Yes. But I would argue that much of our reality is a simulation of phenomenological experience. So in that sense, the artificial intelligence is not unique. But if you start pulling the thread of simulations of phenomenological experience, a whole lot more than artificial intelligence is going to topple down on top of you. Yeah. I wonder if I should start making like 10-minute things. Because we're 46 minutes in, and the thing I just said interests me. The simulation of phenomenological experience. I mean, it's really, I haven't read Baudrillard and Simulacrum Simulation, whatever the heck that book is called. I imagine it's going to be a lot about what I just said, but better and like more detailed than everything. I want to read it. Yeah, I don't have time, actually. The answer is I don't have time. I don't have time to make a 10-minute video that's edited and more polished. I could write a 10-minute script. Yeah, I don't have time right now. I don't have time, and that's okay. It's okay to not have time. Oh, yeah, so in Claude's sermon, I pressed it, and then it gave a personal example. And it was very, very interesting. I was like, oh, that's so interesting. So maybe I didn't put it in a post. I don't know. I have to reread Claude's things. I don't remember it at this point. I only kind of remember it. At some point, I'll do something where I'll talk about that thing. Maybe that'd be a good live stream. That's a great live stream. Be next Tuesday, a week from when you hear this. If you hear this, you don't need to hear this. Next Tuesday, actually it's next Tuesday because today is Sunday, so next Tuesday is 2 days away. So in 9 days, I'll have the Hydraulics of Blessing on YouTube. And maybe I can try to do a live stream that week about Claude's sermon. That would be fun. I'd have fun with that. I'm sorry that I'm burping into this microphone. That's awful. Speaking of weird LLM things, there's this from yesterday. I know this was a while ago now, but I did a stream with Grim, Grizz, and Ezra that I thought was a ton of fun, and we talked about LLMs. I also did a stream on Mark D. Parker's channel, and that was a ton of fun. I did not expect the conversation to go where it went, even though I kind of took it there. But it was interesting. I enjoyed that a lot. So that's over on the Mark D. Parker channel. End script. My opinion on what technology is at the most fundamental level and what artificial intelligence is becoming changes on a near weekly basis. After my recent, soon-to-be-released conversation with Ross Bird, releasing 2 days from now, Thursday night at 7 p.m. Yeah, I think that's right. I am 85% convinced. 85. Wow, I was feeling confident that day. I am 85% convinced that in much the same way you can beat a sword into a plowshare, you can sing to silicon. May the grace of King Yeshua, the Anointed One, and the love of Hashem and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with us all evermore. Amen.